very urgent business of a national interest. And as you can see, members are trickling in. Remember, the special sitting had been scheduled to start at 10. So members are walking in. As you can see there, the whip, of course, trying to ensure that the members are seated. The business to be transacted include the first reading of a number of bills. There is the Digital Health Bill, also the Social Health Insurance National Bill, and also the consideration of the Sugar Bill that is currently at its second reading stage. And the members will be going into the Committee of the Whole on this particular bill to look at it and debate further on it. But as you can see, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, has stepped into the chambers. He will be presiding over this special sitting this morning. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast that is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in partnership with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Good morning.
Waheshimiwa, tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umetoa nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, tukusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Tunakuomba uturumshie baraka zako sisi tulikutanika hapa, na utajalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili tukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Sergeant, we still need a few more members for quorum. Okay. Honorable members, we now have quorum to transact business on this special sitting. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Order, honorable members, take your seats. Take your seats. Honorable members, I take this opportunity to welcome you to the special sitting of the House. Order. Honorable members, I take this opportunity to welcome you to the special sittings of the House today, Thursday, 14 September 2023, convened pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 29 relating to the procedure for convening of special sittings of the House during recess. I wish to report to the House that on 4th September 2023, I received a request from the leader of the majority party asking me to convene a special sitting of the National Assembly to consider certain urgent business. Honorable members, whereas I'm conscious that you are still on your deserved recess break, I took cognizance of the fact of the urgency of the business so specified in the request by the leader of the majority party. Accordingly, I acceded to the request to convene a special sittings today, Thursday, 14th September 2023, commencing 10 a.m. for the morning sitting and at 2:30 p.m. in the case of the afternoon sittings. Consequently, honorable members, in keeping with the requirement of Standing Order 29, I did communicate to members and the public of the special sittings of the House via Gazette Notice number 12053 of 8 September 2023 and through the usual notifications in the dailies. Member, take your seat. Take the nearest seat. The nearest. Take the nearest seat. Honorable members, in this regard, the special sittings of the House this morning and afternoon are properly convened. Honorable members, as specified in the Gazette Notice, the purpose of the sittings as follows. 1. Conveyance of any urgent messages from the President, the National Executive, or the Senate. 2. Tabling of any papers with statutory timelines, including subsidiary legislation. 3. Tabling of and notices of special motions on the A. Report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as the DPP. B. Joint report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya. And C. Report of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund on the approval of the nominees for appointment to the National Government Constituencies Development Fund Board. 4. Tabling of a notice of motion on the joint report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on the memorandum by the National Treasury and Economic Planning on action plans to revive and commercialize state-owned sugar companies. 5. Transaction of the following businesses. Consideration of special motions on the 1. Report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as DPP. 2. Joint report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank. 3. Report of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund on the approval for appointment of the nominees to the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board. And 4. Consideration of a motion on joint report of the Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning and the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on the memorandum by the National Treasury and Economic Planning on action plans to revive and commercialize state-owned sugar companies. B. First reading of the following bills: the Digital Health Bill 2023 and the Social Health Insurance Bill 2023. C. First reading of any other urgent bill certified as urgent by the Honorable Speaker. D. Consideration of Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Act Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. E. Voting on a motion for the second reading of the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2023. F. Consideration of the Committee of the Whole House and third reading of the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022. G. Consideration of the Committee of the Whole House of the Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. 6. Consideration of any other priority business certified as urgent by the Honorable Speaker. In this regard, I have consented to a request by the Leader of the Majority Party to include the Privatization Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2023 for consideration in second reading and in Committee of the Whole House today. Honorable members, business relating to the consideration of the nominees for appointment to the offices of DPP, Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya, and members of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board, respectively, will be considered during the afternoon sitting, following tabling of the relevant committee reports and issuance of notices of motion. Having said that, honorable members, today's sittings come barely a week after the conclusion of the Africa Climate Change Summit 2023, which was held at the Kenyatta International Conference Center, KICC, from 4th to 6th September 2023. I wish to thank members of this House for actively participating in the summit and the Africa Climate Change Parliamentarians Dialogue that was hosted in this chamber under the chairmanship of Honorable Senator Kajwang, and yours truly graced the occasion on the 6th September 2023 under the auspices of the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining of this House as well. Honorable members, noting the unique role of Parliament in anchoring policy into law and domesticating international obligations on one hand, and exercising oversight of the execution on the other hand, I challenge relevant committees of this House to take up the resolutions of the Africa Climate Change Summit with a view to pursuing their implementation through legislation or regulations. I thank you. Next.
Order number 3, messages.
Honorable members at the bar, take your seats. I have 2 short messages. Take the nearest seats. Commissioner Faith, the word nearest must be strange to you. Honorable members, I've got 2 short messages. One on the establishment of the National Dialogue Committee. Honorable members, Standing Order 41.5 relating to messages to and from the Senate provides that if a message is received from the Senate at a time when the House is not in session, the Speaker shall forthwith cause the message to be transmitted to every member and shall report the message to the House on the day the House next sits. In this regard, honorable members, I wish to report to the House that on Thursday, 31st August 2023, being a period within the September 2023 recess, I received a message from the Senate regarding approval of the resolution on establishment of the National Dialogue Committee. In keeping with the House resolution of Wednesday, 15th February 2023, I directed the clerk to transmit the message to all members of the National Assembly by notification number 005 of Wednesday, 6th September 2023. The message conveyed that on Tuesday, 29th August 2023, the Senate considered the resolution on establishment of the National Dialogue Committee and passed it without amendments. Honorable members, you recall that on Wednesday, 16th August 2023, the National Assembly considered and passed the said resolution to facilitate dialogue and consensus building and to recommend appropriate constitutional, legal, and policy reforms on issues of concern to the people of Kenya and referred the matter to the Senate for its concurrence. Honorable members, the concurrence of the Senate concluded the bicameral consideration of the resolution on establishment of the National Dialogue Committee. For the record, the committee has since commenced the execution of its mandate, having been accorded the necessary secretarial facilitation by the clerks of the Houses of Parliament. And I would add that yesterday the co-chairs of the Dialogue Committee called on the Speaker and exchanged some progress report on what they are discussing. Honorable members, you are accordingly informed. The second message is on the passage of 2 National Assembly bills by the Senate. Honorable members, Standing Order 41.5 relating to messages to and from the Senate provides that if a message is received from the Senate at a time when the House is not in session, the Speaker shall forthwith cause the message to be transmitted to every member and shall report the message to the House on the day the House next sits. Further, honorable members, you recall that on Wednesday, 15th February 2023, the House resolved that upon receipt of any message relating to the Senate's amendments to a bill originating in the National Assembly, the Speaker shall forthwith refer the schedule of the Senate amendments to the relevant committee for consideration pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 145, Senate amendments to the bills originating in the National Assembly, and report such fact to the House on resumption. In this regard, honorable members, I wish to report to the House that on Thursday, 31st August 2023, being a period during the September 2023 recess, I received 2 messages from the Senate regarding the passage of 2 National Assembly bills. I further directed the clerk to transmit the messages to all members of the National Assembly via notification number 004 of Wednesday, 6 September 2023. The first message conveyed that on Thursday, 31st August 2023, the Senate considered and passed the Climate Change Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 42 of 2023 without amendments. Honorable members, the passage of the Climate Change Amendment Bill 2023 by the Senate in the same form passed by the National Assembly on Wednesday, 23rd August 2023 concluded the bicameral consideration of the said bill in accordance with Article 110 of the Constitution. In this regard, on Friday, 1st September 2023, I did present the bill to His Excellency the President for assent pursuant to the provisions of Article 110(5) of the Constitution. The bill has since been assented to and is now an act of Parliament. Honorable members, the second message conveyed that on Tuesday, 29th August 2023, the Senate considered and passed the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023 with amendments. In the circumstances, this House is expected to consider the schedule of the Senate's amendments to the said bill in the manner contemplated in Standing Orders 145 to 147 of the National Assembly Standing Orders. To this end, honorable members, and in keeping with the House resolution of Wednesday, 15th, 2023, I did refer the schedule of the Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2023 to the Public Debt and Privatization Committee for consideration. It is expected that the committee has concluded consideration of the Senate amendments and should table its report within the morning sitting of today, Thursday, 14th September 2023, in order to guide the House in considering the matters listed under order numbers 12 and 13 of today's order paper. The House is accordingly informed. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Yes, majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, 14 September 2023. The Draft Wildlife Conservation and Management National Parks, Reserves and Sanctuaries Regulations 2023, and the explanatory memorandum from the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage. 2, sessional paper number 5 of 2023 on the National Policy on Labor Migration from the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. Murugara. Order, Honorable Murugara, be part of the proceedings.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 14th September 2023. The report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on the vetting of a nominee for the appointment as the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, George. Next, Co-Chairperson joined Parliamentary Committee on Vetting of a nominee for appointment as the Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya. Kimani? Or is McClub today? You are the new chairman.
Yes, I'm holding brief for my chairman, my good chairman.
Okay.
So, Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 14 September 2023. joint report of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the vetting of a nominee for appointment as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK.
Thank you. Next, Chairperson Select Committee on NGCDF, Sirma.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, the 14th September 2023. Report on the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund on vetting of nominees for appointment to the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next, Co-Chairperson, Joint Parliamentary Committee on the consideration of the memorandum by the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Maclap, is that you again?
Not submotion?
No, laying paper.
Allow me to, that one I will apply the first one. Let me get another one.
You got? Okay, if I remember approving that, I'll go to the next. We'll put that in abeyance for a little while. Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation. Hold. Chair, Public Debt Committee. Shuria. Are you ready?
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
You don't appear to be.
So, sorry, I was informed that this was to be moved by the leader of majority, so that's why I wasn't.
It is not moving. It's laying.
Oh, it's laying, sorry.
Yes.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 14th September 2023. Report of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee on its consideration of the Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. I beg to lay.
Thank you. Next, Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation. Chepkonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 14th September 2023. Report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Universities Regulations 2023, legal notice number 56 of 2023. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next, Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Health. Dr. Bukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 14 September 2023, report of the Departmental Committee on Health on its consideration on the Kenya Drugs Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 54 of 2022. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You have two papers to lay.
This is
the one of assisted reproductive
is not ready.
Bill is not ready.
It's not yet ready.
Okay. Before we go to the next order, Maclap, are you ready now? Chairman Kimani, you are holding the House. Are you ready to table your paper? Go ahead. Give him the mic. There's one next to you. Is paper laying?
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, the 14th of December 2023. the joint report on the Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning and the Departmental Committee of Agriculture and Livestock on its consideration of the memorandum by the National Treasury and Economic Planning on action and plans to revive and commercialize state-owned sugar companies. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs in its report on the vetting of a nominee for approval as the Director of Public Prosecutions laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 14th September 2023, and pursuant to Article 157(2) of the Constitution and Section 8(1) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Mr. Renson Mulele Ingonga, OGW, as the Director of Public Prosecutions of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, George. Next, Co-Chairperson, Joint Committee on vetting of a nominee for appointment as the Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya. Kimani.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give the following notice of motion: the vetting of a nominee for appointment as the Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget in its report on the vetting of a nominee for appointment as the Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of the House this morning, Thursday, the 14th of December 2023, and pursuant to Section 11(2)A of the Central Bank of Kenya Act, Cap 491, and Section 8(1) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, that this House approves the appointment of Mr. Andrew Mokite Musangi as the Chairperson of the Board of the Central Bank of Kenya.
Thank you. Next, Chairperson, Select Committee on NGCDF, Musa Sirma.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that taking into consideration the findings of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund in its report on the vetting of nominees for appointment as members of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 14 September 2023, and pursuant to Section 15(1)(c) of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act 2015 and Section 8(1) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of the following persons as members of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. 1. Honorable Olago Oluoch, CBS. Honorable Janet Teya and Senator Ms. Matsisa Naomi Shionga. I beg to move.
You are giving notice of motion. So what are you moving? Next, Co-Chairperson, Joint Parliamentary Committee on the consideration of the memorandum by the National Treasury, Kimani, and Economic Planning. Chairman Kimani.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give the following notice of motion: consideration of the memorandum by the National Treasury and Economic Planning on actions to revive and commercialize state-owned sugar companies. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give the following notice for the following motion: that this House adopts the joint report of the Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning and the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on its consideration of the memorandum by the National Treasury and Economic Planning on action plans to revive and commercialize state-owned sugar companies laid on the table of the House this morning, the Thursday, the 14th of September 2023.
Thank you. Next, Chairperson, Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Universities Regulations 2023 laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 14 September 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 and Standing Order Number 2210, Paragraph 4B, annuls in its entirety the Universities Regulations published as Legal Notice Number 56 of 2023. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Dawood Rahim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 259D2A, I wish to give report on the untimely demise of the former member of Nordimenti constituency, the Honorable Silas Murioki Rutere, which took place on the 6th of September at the MP Shah Hospital while he was undergoing treatment. Honorable Speaker, the late Honorable Silas Murioki was born on January 12, 1945 in Kiadandi Hill, Kanyira sublocation of Ronogone location in Meru County. He attended Chugu Primary School and later joined Muiteria Primary School, where he graduated and was among the top 12 students who qualified to join the then Kaga Intermediate School for his upper primary education. Upon completion of his education, the late Silas Murioki became a teacher and taught in various schools for a period of 20 years. Being a visionary leader, a champion for change, and a true advocate for knowledge and empowerment, the late Honorable Silas Murioki joined the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, as the Executive Secretary, Meru Branch, from the year 1986 to 2001. Honorable Speaker, popularly known as Mwesh, the late Silas Murioki vied for the Nordimenti parliamentary seat in the year 2007 general elections on the Mazingira Green Party of Kenya, which he won and diligently served from the year 2007 to 2013. He was an astute legislator whose contribution to various parliamentary committees, among them the Library Committee, the Lands and Natural Resources Committee, and the Public Investments Committee, was invaluable. Still a teacher at heart, under his leadership, schools flourished and educational initiatives thrived. He has spearheaded the establishment of new schools, upgraded existing infrastructure, and implemented the establishment of new schools, innovative programs that nurtured and developed young minds by impacting 122 schools and 77 secondary schools through what he referred to as making CDF transformative. His unwavering belief in the power of education was evident in the numerous scholarships and grants he provided, enabling deserving students to pursue their dreams. Mwesh will continue to be adored and deeply missed by various beneficiaries that enjoyed a better learning experience using the CDF. Honorable Speaker, the late Silas Murioki impact extended beyond the boundaries of education. He believed in the potential of Nordimenti constituency and worked tirelessly to create opportunities for growth and prosperity. From advocating for economic development and fostering community engagement, he left an indelible mark. Honorable Speaker, on my behalf and on behalf of the great people of Nordimenti constituency, I wish to extend my deepest condolences to the family of the late Silas Murioki for the loss of a remarkable public servant and leader. His spirit and influence will forever resonate in the halls of our schools, in the hearts of our students, and in the progress they continue to make generations to come. Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, may I request that we all stand to observe a minute of silence in honor of our departed colleague. May the soul of Honorable Silas Murioki Rutere rest in eternal peace. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. A Member of Parliament of North Imenti, Rahim Dawood. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, will you be upstanding to observe a minute's silence in honor of our fallen colleague who served in this house in the 10th Parliament? May his soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you. Dorothy Kiara, you've asked me to give you 1 minute to say something.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I too join in mourning this great leader, Honorable Silas Murioki. Honorable Silas Murioki is a man I worked with for 40 good years, 17 years as the Executive Secretary of Kenya National Union of Teachers, and 23 years until his demise in the political arena. Honorable Silas Murioki will be remembered fondly for having been in the forefront of fighting for the teachers' rights. He was a true trade unionist, and one remarkable thing is the famous 1997 teachers' strike, where Honorable Murioki was a staunch Kano follower, and he went and negotiated for the teachers of this country to be awarded 200% salary increment, which has never been awarded in any time in history. Until to date, Honorable Speaker, some of the teachers are still languishing and waiting for this money to hit their accounts. Honorable Speaker, I join the family, I join the North Imenti people, I join the teachers of this country in mourning this great legislator and a fighter for human rights. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Dorothy. Murugara, 2 minutes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me on behalf of the people of Tharaka constituency and Tharaka Nithi County, and on my own behalf, to relay our sympathies to the family of the late Silas Murioki Rutere and the people of the great county of Meru. Silas Murioki actually achieved a lot for this country, and especially achieved that which many people couldn't have achieved, including defeating the self-declared king of the Meru, the late Jackson Againe, in elections. Silas Murioki was a very humble man. He served the people of North Imenti with a lot of dedication, and also served the teachers' fraternity with a lot of zeal. He is remembered as one of the greatest trade unionists in the country, in which he actually fought for the plight of teachers to have better remuneration, to have better working conditions, and for that he has always been echoed as a leader, a great leader of the country, a great leader of the Meru community, and a great leader of everyone else. Those remarks, may his soul rest in eternal peace.
Nkunji. Sorry, Prendegeri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
2 minutes.
I stand here also to eulogize the late Honorable Member of Parliament for Imenti North, and to say out to him, Mr. Speaker, my constituency was carved from Imenti North. Before 2013, Honorable Murioki was leading the largest constituency in Meru, and when delimination was done, board was created from North Imenti. Mr. Speaker, when I took over, the only mark of distinction in terms of infrastructure development in Bodo constituency is what was left behind by Honorable Silas Murioki. Mr. Speaker, leading a very large constituency was not easy, and bringing people together was not easy. But through the effort and initiatives of the late Silas Murioki, this greater constituency was in cohesion. We lived in peace, and therefore to us is passing on as really deprived as a great son of Meru and Bori and North Imenti in general.
Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Karemba, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wish also to join the rest of the country in mourning this great leader from North Imenti. I knew Silas, the Honorable Silas Murioki, as a very humble leader. He was a soft-spoken leader, a leader who was known for championing the interest of the teachers of Kenya. And he'll go down in history as a person who had the best interest of the teachers of Kenya in his heart. He's also known for having done a very good job in his constituency of North Imenti. And I want to say that the people of North Imenti, the people of Meru County, the people of Mount Kenya East have lost a great man in Silas Murioki and will never forget him. So I wish to extend my sympathies and those of the people of Runyenje's constituency, to his family, and to the whole country for the loss of this great person. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Sunguli Julius, and then we'll close with Sirma.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to also pass my condolences to the family of Honorable Silas Murioki. Honorable Murioki was not just a son of Meru, but actually a great son of Kenya. I had a lot of opportunity to serve with him as a member of KANU. He believed in the traditional values of our great party, and we did serve with him. And I remembered him as a person who loved to unite people. He was not divisive. He was quite straightforward. And he believed that loyalty to your cause was a very important thing. I wish to mourn together with the people of Meru and say that for Honorable Murioki, may God rest him in peace. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity to eulogize our great son of this country, the late Silas Murioki. Murioki was a good representative of the teachers' fraternity in this country. Secondly, he also served with me in this parliament. Mr. Speaker, Murioki was a good debater. Murioki was a team player because we managed to do exchange programs on Arambes. He used to come to my constituency, and I went many times to Meru. And therefore, the people of Meru know that this great son of theirs was not only coming from Imenti North, but from the whole of this country, as he was a great son and a great leader who would be dependable at all times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But not least, Carido, member for Igembe. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. May I also utilize this great man of Meru. I knew Murioki. He was a great leader. I served with him when we were in the Alliance Party of Kenya, the former BAS. He was our chair and a great man. He was a great mobilizer and a very reasonable leader. May I extend my apologies to his family and the people of Imenti North on behalf of the people of Igembe Central, because we are brothers and we really feel the pain of losing this great leader from Meru County. May his soul rest in peace and may his family be comforted with this message. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, reduction of publication period of specified bills.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period for the following bills. 1, the Digital Health Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2023, from 14 days to 6 days. And 2, the Social Health Insurance National Assembly Bill number 58 of 2023, from 14 days to 3 days. Honorable Speaker, this being a procedural motion, I don't need to say much, but these are very critical bills for the realization of our universal health coverage. Honorable Speaker, all these members will appreciate the problems that the people of Kenya are suffering from because of a dysfunctional health system. And therefore, universal health coverage is an urgent matter, not just for ourselves, but for the country and the people that we represent. And Honorable Speaker, I want to ask the Deputy Whip, Honorable Naomi Wako, to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second, as this is a very important bill, and for our effectiveness, it is good for us to approve it as soon as possible and implement. Thank you. I second.
Order, honorable members. Order. Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the following bills. 1, the Digital Health Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2023, from 14 days to 6 days. And 2, the Social Health Insurance National Assembly Bill number 58 of 2023, from 14 days to 3 days. I put the question. Honorable members, I put the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the following bills. 1, the Digital Health Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2023, from 14 days to 6 days. And 2, the Social Health Insurance National Assembly Bill number 58 of 2023, from 14 days to 3 days. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022, second reading. Question to be put.
Order, honorable members. Johanna Ngeno, take your seat. The nearest seat. Paulo, you freeze where you are. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 9, which is that the Sugar Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2022, be now read a second time. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the development, regulation, and promotion of the sugar industry, to provide for the establishment, powers, and functions of the Kenya Sugar Board, and for connected purposes.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 10, the Digital Health Bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the establishment of the Digital Health Agency, to provide a framework for provision of digital health services, to establish a comprehensive integrated digital health information system, and for connected purposes.
Thank you. Next.
Order number 11, the Social Health Insurance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 58 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to establish the framework for the management of social health insurance, to provide for the establishment of the Social Health Authority, to give effect to Article 43(1)(a) of the Constitution, and for connected purposes.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 12, motion, consideration of Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023.
Majority Leader, that is your motion, or is it Sharia who is moving?
Honorable Speaker, my apologies. Quite a number of distractions. I think members are quite excited to be back after the short break. I'm told that we are all behaving like an opening day in school. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16, be now rejected. Honorable Speaker, the amendments, Honorable Speaker, proposed to the debt anchor of the PFM Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, as proposed by the Senate, Honorable Speaker, would be very detrimental, especially to our work as the National Assembly, in line with the provisions of Article 95 and 221 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, particularly the proposal to have, or rather to receive reports and pass resolutions on matters related to national government borrowing will impact the fiscal operations and financial management of the national government, especially when the resolutions relate to borrowing and which affect substantial amounts of the national government budgets and operations. Honorable Speaker, this will further curtail the function, as I said, of the National Assembly in the consideration of national government budgets when they are submitted every year by the 30th of April. This is solely under the purview, as I said, Honorable Speaker, of the National Assembly pursuant to Articles 95 and 221 of the Constitution, and this provisions, Honorable Speaker, are usually time-bound, that the estimates both on borrowing and the budget estimates, Honorable Speaker, must be tabled before the National Assembly by the 30th of April each year. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if we were to go with the proposals or amendments as done by the Senate, Honorable Speaker, it means we will significantly interfere with the timelines of the budget-making process. And that is part of the reason why the committee decided to oppose the amendments as proposed by the Senate. Further, Honorable Speaker, the committee also did note that these proposals further introduce a new layer of bureaucracy in the approval of borrowing, which could affect the smooth implementation of our national government budgets. And furthermore, Honorable Speaker, consideration of the report by both houses could lead to conflicting resolutions on the national government borrowing without any available mechanism for the resolution of such a disagreement. And Honorable Speaker, it is indeed true. If there is a disagreement between this House and the Senate on issues to touch on borrowing, it will in a big way affect the budget making process, which is strictly under the purview of the National Assembly. And Honorable Speaker, the drafters of our 2010 Constitution were clear when they give the power of the purse to the National Assembly. And I note the Honorable John Buddy is back in the House, Honorable Speaker. And having been in this House at the time when we began implementation of the 2010 Constitution, and being an accomplished accountant, he will tell you that the power of the purse having been given under Articles 94 to 96 to the National Assembly, Honorable Speaker, and also in line with Article 221, we must jealously protect that power and mandate given to this House. And therefore, I want to agree that we move this House to reject the amendments done by the Senate. And Honorable Speaker, then we can kick off a mediation process. And you can imagine, Honorable Speaker, as I said, should we find ourselves in such a situation at the time of budget making and we have disagreements, even on an amendment of a comma or a prefix of a word, Honorable Speaker, it will lead to another mediation process which could take months. And we have seen with the Division of Revenue Bill in the past, mediation going all the way up to the end of a financial year, Honorable Speaker, almost to the end of a financial year. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it will greatly curtail our budget-making process. And I want to beg, Honorable Speaker, that we do agree with the committee and safeguard the role of the National Assembly under Article 95 of the Constitution and protect our budget-making process, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, with that, I beg to move, and I want to ask the Chair of the Privatization Committee, the Honorable Shurie, to second.
Honorable Shurie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I seek to second the motion by the Leader of Majority. Honorable Speaker, I would also like to appreciate members of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee for their commitment and ensuring that their report is tabled on time. Honorable Speaker, in the consideration of the bill, the committee noted and appreciated the important role of the Houses of Parliament playing in legislation, at times acting in unison. However, there are limits. As per Article 93(2) of the Constitution, we must appreciate that both houses have different mandates. Honorable Speaker, the committee noted that the primary amendments by the Senate will degrade the functions of the National Assembly, especially when both houses consider and most importantly pass resolutions relating to national government borrowing. Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that the oversight role of these national governments borrowings on matters of public financial management is the preserve of the National Assembly as per Article 95 of the Constitution. Thus, any reporting requirements imposed in the bill for the national government to comply with should be considered and approved by the National Assembly. This, according to the committee, will reduce conflict whereby two houses may give conflicting resolutions and equally reduce bureaucracy in the matter of assessing the operational of debt threshold. Honorable Speaker, this House notes the critical role that public debt plays today. As such, it seeks to spearhead legal reforms to ensure fiscal policies are sustainable through fiscal consolidation measures. In fact, research has shown that countries that enact reforms have had their debt to GDP ratio fall by 3% on average over a multi-year period. Honorable Speaker, the amendments as adopted by the National Assembly are intended to kickstart this process. We propose that we do not lose sight of this. Honorable Speaker, with this, I beg to second.
Order, honorable members. Karemba, order. Majority Leader, take your seats. Honorable members, before I propose the question, you should note that if we are rejecting the amendments by the Senate, the upshot will be to go to mediation. And if the mood of the House will be that you are agreeing with the Majority Leader and the Committee Chairman, then we limit debate as much as possible in the interest of time, so that you give me an opportunity in the afternoon to give you a communication nominating members to the mediation team to go and sit with the senators. I have been requested by the Honorable Farah Malim that I give him 2 minutes to say something. So after I propose the question, I'll give him 2 minutes, then I'll put the question. Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that the amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, be now rejected. Farah?
With this. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, when we were designing a new constitution for this country, we did not want to reinvent the wheel. We basically were looking at all. Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from Salasia, from all these members who are here consulting very loudly?
Honorable members at the dispatch box, take your seats.
Mr. Speaker, we had no intention of creating something that cannot work. We went the presidential system. The reason why we went the presidential system is that we looked at our own 30 years plus that time. I can't remember how many years it was by 2008, 2007, 2010 we promulgated. It was close to 40 years. And then we decided we were going to have a presidential system. A presidential system pretty much as closely modeled along the American system as possible. And in those circumstances, Mr. Speaker, the role of Senate has nothing to do with budget making. The role of budget making is the role of what you would call either the lower house, I don't care whether we are called the lower house, but the National Assembly for that matter. The Senate is the House of Union. Mr. Speaker, the Senate is the House of Union because you have a senator from Lamu and you have a senator from Kakamega. That is the House of Union. That is the house that brings the nations of this country into one nation called Kenya. That's why Wyoming has got two senators and one House of Representatives. And at the same time, California has got 37 House of Representatives and only 2 senators also. The role of the Senate should be, 1, to protect devolution. 2, to do such things like ratification of appointment, approval of vetting and approval of members of the government who are appointed by the executive should not be a role for the for the National Assembly, but should be a role for the Senate. As far as the past is concerned, this House should be the one that has got that exclusive responsibility of creating the budget in this country. The other thing is that, Mr. Speaker, every time we have an issue here, instead of going back to the best practices and creating an institution out of this and doing it for posterity, we go back to negotiate. This is not a political process. This is not an Azimio or Kenya Kwanza issue. It's not what you call this party, that issue. The National Assembly has got its own role cut for it, and the Senate has got its own role cut for it. And there's nothing we can change. In the areas where there are gray areas right now and it's not that well defined, then we need to go back again and see how we can firm up the Constitution so that there is no doubt at any given time of the 2 houses trying to do the same things at the same time. Mr. Speaker, with us, I support the concept that these things should be rejected, and I support this concept that we should not even negotiate about such things. If there's our role should be cut clear, the role of the Senate should be cut clear, and if there's a constitutional provision to do that, let us go ahead and have that constitutional provision to do that. Senate has got the role of protecting devolution and doing the determination and the criteria to be used for the amount of money that is devolved and the money is going to be distributed between the different counties. But not something central like this. This one is the House of, this House, the National Assembly, and we should not have any issue about such things. Thank you.
Thank you. John Badi, I'm told you. Please take an average of 2 minutes each, or even 1 minute.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, I agree with you. I think what Senate is trying to do, Mr. Speaker, would be rewriting our Constitution. There's nothing wrong if Senate wants a little bit more power. I thought we gave them too little power in terms of financial management, but that should be done in a procedural manner. We amend the Constitution and allow more leverage to the Senate. But as it is, Mr. Speaker, I'm in concurrence with the committee that we need to reject this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Makali Mulu, take 1 minute also, and I'll finalize with Omboko Milemba 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I do agree with my colleagues in terms of what they are saying. The truth of the matter, Honorable Speaker, is the matters public debt are closely associated with budget deficits. And this is a budget for the national government. I mean, it's the totality of the budget. And where there is need to borrow, even at the county level, because if you look at the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, the Senate is supposed to be promoting the interests of the counties. So even where counties are expected to borrow, Honorable Speaker, they are always guaranteed by the national government. So matters public debt are at national level, and the only thing which Senate can do, Honorable Speaker, is by a dissolution of their House, the Senate, is already provided for in Article 211. They can actually, by resolution, get a lot of details relating to debt issues, but not by straight arrangement where they get reports straight from the Treasury to them. So on those bases, Honorable Speaker, I think it's important we don't rewrite the Constitution. So I support the rejection, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, Omboko Milemba, 1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just in 1 minute, that Article 93 speaks very clearly about the two houses created, Senate and the National Assembly. But 95 proceeds to speak about the roles of the National Assembly and the Senate. And in 95, the matters, budget, and the powers of this country, like in many other jurisdictions, is under the purview of National Assembly. And as a member of this committee, when we looked at it, Honorable Speaker, we realized that this could be a very small but direct encroachment on the powers otherwise that are bestowed on the National Assembly. And if allowed, we would have actually redrafted our own constitution. And therefore, we advise that we reject this and have the Senate do its work as prescribed in Article 96, and the National Assembly do its functions as prescribed in Article 95. Furthermore, and lastly, Honorable Speaker, it will create another layer of bureaucracy in the budget-making process, because borrowing is part and parcel of the budget-making process. If that happens, the timelines that are so envisaged in the Constitution will actually be breached, and therefore I support the rejection. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, order, take your seats or freeze wherever you are. Honorable members, I now put the question, which is that the Senate amendments to the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, be now rejected. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 13, special motion, consideration of a nominee for appointment as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya.
Yes, the Kimani, chairperson, finance. Where is Kimani? Has been here? Yes. Is your motion now? Central Bank. You can now ask Shelley to come. Ask Shelley.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise that this House approves the joint committee report on the approval hearing of Mr. Andrew Mukita Musangi as the chairperson of the Central Bank of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, before setting the specifics of the approval hearing, it is befitting to understand the motivation behind this vetting exercise, Honorable Speaker. Article 231 of our Constitution establishes the bank, the Central Bank of Kenya, which, Honorable Speaker, is an institution responsible for formulating monetary policy, promoting stability in the economic space, issuing currency, and performing other actions as may be confirmed by an Act of Parliament. Section 11(2)(a) of the Central Bank Kenya Act, Honorable Speaker, establishes the office of the chairperson of the Central Bank, who is appointed by His Excellency the President through a transparent and competitive process with the approval of the National Assembly, with the approval of Parliament. Honorable Speaker, the chairperson oversees all the board meetings and should be an individual who is knowledgeable and experienced in matters of monetary policy, financial, banking, and economic matters, and other disciplines as stipulated in the Central Bank Act. Honorable Speaker, the President nominated Mr. Andrew Mukita Musangi for the position of the chairperson of the Central Bank of Kenya and communicated the same through to the National Assembly and the Senate. Honorable Speaker, yourself and the Speaker of the Senate did direct that a joint committee of Finance and National Planning of the National Assembly and the Standing Committee of Finance and Budget of the Senate to conduct approval hearings and submit a report to this House, Honorable Speaker. An advertisement was made in all the dailies and gazettement of the time and approval for this candidate, Honorable Speaker, specified. we invited members of the public to submit written written memoranda on the candidature of Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi. It is good to report, Honorable Speaker, that we did not receive any memorandum from the public, especially adversarial, on the appointment of Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi. Mr. Speaker, the nominee appearing before the joint committees showed that he had a vast knowledge and experience in matters of finance, monetary and economic matters as stipulated by the Central Bank of Kenya Act. He was Honorable Speaker, when it asked him of the question of how to tame the high cost of debt, Mr. Andrew, the nominee for the chairperson of the Central Bank, described to the committee that there was need to have a strategy on responsible fiscal management, monetary stability, and a dedication to transparency and a collaboration to achieve long-term economic growth, as well as reduction in the overall debt by putting in place measures to bring about competitive debt pricing. Madam Speaker, the nominee holds a Bachelor of Law degree from the University of Hull in the United Kingdom, and additionally, he holds a postgraduate diploma in law from the Kenya School of Law. He has also attended various trainings across the world on matters of corporate governance. It is also key to note that, Honorable Speaker, the candidate, he is a director of very many institutions, especially financial institutions, to name just a few, Vipingo PLC, Two Rivers, among others. Mr. Mukite, Honorable Speaker, has 28 years of experience, including and especially legal practice. Key to note, Honorable Speaker, was that during his practice in law, most of his clients were bank institutions. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we have a candidate who understands the banking sector, having represented most of these banks in many matters in the court in his 28 years of experience as a lawyer, Honorable Speaker. In accordance to Section 11(7)(a) of the Central Bank of Kenya Act, which necessitates that a candidate to be approved to be a chairperson of Central Bank of Kenya must be a Kenyan citizen, we would like to confirm this to this House that actually one Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi is a Kenyan citizen. Honorable Speaker, we tasked the candidate on several matters, especially the issue of cryptocurrencies and digital currencies. And Honorable Speaker, it was interesting to note that the candidate talked about having a central bank-backed digital currency. And especially in this space where we're talking about bitcoins and cryptocurrencies and talking about many Kenyans and global citizens losing a lot of money in this particular sector, just to name the most recent collapse of FTX in the United States of America, Honorable Speaker, shows that the time is ripe to stop using liquid currency, to stop using notes, to stop using coins. And the revitalization of mobile money, for example, Honorable Speaker, the use of M-Pesa and Equitel money and all the other mobile wallets actually has shown the world that it is possible to have those transactions being done without necessarily liquid carrying money in cash, Honorable Speaker. So most importantly, we put him to task and we're looking forward to, for the first time, Kenya becoming a lead again, not just in mobile money transfer, but having a central bank-backed digital currency. And this, Honorable Speaker, will also go a long way in harnessing matters in preventing cybercrime, ensuring that there's a protection of money of Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. We also tasked him on the question of the collapse of several banks. The last few years, Honorable Speaker, has seen the collapse of various institutions that have gone down with Kenyans' money. Just to name a few would be Chase Bank. First Community Bank has been struggling with customers not being able to get their deposits. Honorable Speaker, the candidate was telling us the best way he sees as a strategy to prevent this collapse of banks is to increase the capital requirement of these particular institutions, to have mergers and acquisitions. And I know the banking sector, for example, in the last few years, were very worried about when international banks like Standard Chartered Bank, Barclays, now ABSA, Stanbic Bank came to Kenya, and there was a fear that we were giving out our banking business to multinationals at the expense of Kenyan businesses. But what we would see after a few years, Honorable Speaker, was the starts and the progression of Kenyan-owned banks. Just to name a few: Equity Bank, KCB Bank, which are almost 100% Kenyan-owned. It is interesting, Honorable Speaker, to note, as a result of that, allowing these multinationals to come into Kenya in a banking space and take the lead, we have now our Kenyan banks wake up and becoming the lead. The best bank or the most prominent bank in DRC Congo, for example, Honorable Speaker, is Equity Bank of Kenya. And therefore, this demonstrates that you don't need to fear opening that space, Honorable Speaker. The Kenya shillings has taken a great dive over US dollar for the last few months. And all the efforts, Honorable Speaker, to bring down the exchange rate between the US dollar and the Kenya shillings has borne very little fruit, to be honest. We put to task this nominee, what new strategies do we think should be put in place to tame this depreciation of the Kenya shillings against the dollar? And it was interesting to note, Honorable Speaker, that there is an existing East African Monetary Treaty that sets out for the establishment of a common currency in the East African community. However, Honorable Speaker, very little progress has been made in this frontier, which begs the question: if a trader in the manga is buying products or services from the neighboring Tanzania, why does that person need to worry about the exchange rate of Kenya shillings to the dollar? If a trader in Busia wants to buy fuel across the other side in Uganda, why does that person need to worry about the exchange rate of Uganda shilling or Kenya shillings to the dollar? We have become slaves of this dollar, Honorable Speaker, and it's high time the central banks of East Africa, the political leadership of East Africa, puts to rest the matter of this interest rate, that someone sitting in a far-off country determines what value our shillings are through the establishment of the East African Community currency, and hopefully moving forward, even having an Afro currency. What would be a currency acceptable across all Africa, Honorable Speaker? We've seen this happen with the European Union. Even despite exit from Brexit, you can go to very many countries in European Union and you just need the euros, Honorable Speaker. So we're looking forward, we're wishing this candidate all the best. My ask for this House is we consider this great Kenyan, this great professional with 28 years of experience in legal, who has demonstrated good knowledge of financial, monetary, and corporate governance through all the institutions that he worked and through even running his own successful legal firm, and approve him as the next chairperson of the Central Bank of Kenya. And hopefully, then he will guide the bank in making sure, again, let me say two important things again, just to repeat, that we have a central bank-backed digital currency. And we get away from the over-reliance of the US dollar by having, for starters, an East African community currency, and hopefully have an Afro currency that will be used as the medium of exchange across the African continent. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and ask the Honorable Vice Chair to second.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the report for the nomination of Chairperson of the Central Bank Board. Madam Speaker, I do not want to belabor the point. I think the Chair has given our committee position, but I only want to say the nominee is very qualified, Madam Speaker. This House should release him to go and perform his duties as a chairperson of the Central Bank, Madam Speaker. There are so many things that need to be fixed in the economy, Madam Speaker, and therefore I do not want to belabor the point. I want to say I second, I support, and second. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable
The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo, member for Funyula. Let me propose the question. Honorable members, I now propose the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget in its report on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of this House on Thursday, 14th, 2023, and pursuant to Section 11, 2A of the Central Bank of Kenya, Cap 491, and Section 8.1 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, this House approves the appointment of Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi as the chairperson of the Board of the Central Bank of Kenya. Okay. All right, Leader of Majority, we can give you a chance since you put up your hand. You sat down and couldn't see you. Okay, you'll go next.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support the appointment of the chairperson of the Board of Directors of Central Bank, Wakili Andrew Mukite Musangi. Honorable Speaker, as the chair of the committee and vice chair have noted in their committee report, Mr. Andrew Musangi is an accomplished lawyer and a very good professional who has served in various other capacities and therefore passes a bill. And following his vetting by the committee, Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with that committee that indeed he is a professional who fits the bill to serve as the chair of the Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, Mr. Musangi succeeds another lawyer, Advocate Mohammed Nyaoga, who is the immediate former chair of the Central Bank Board. Honorable Speaker, I don't know what preference is there for lawyers to head this board, but probably because they have done well before, Honorable Speaker, but I don't support Andrew Musangi because he's an advocate or a lawyer, but more so because, as I said, he's an accomplished professional, a man whose integrity is unquestionable, and I want to encourage Andrew Musangi to continue working as the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank without entertaining anything that would jeopardize either his own integrity, that of the board, or of the management of the Central Bank of Kenya. Andrew Musangi now heads a board, Honorable Speaker, that is also under very capable leadership at the managerial level under former PS, Dr. Thuge, who is now the governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, and former PS Susan Koech, who is now the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, it is my prayer and hope that as they govern the Central Bank of Kenya under Chairman Musangi and this board, they will work to ensure that the integrity of our financial or banking sector is safeguarded, Honorable Speaker. That Kenyans put their money in banks knowing that that bank will not collapse the following day, Honorable Speaker. It's my prayer, Honorable Speaker, that this board will ensure that the current management of the Central Bank of Kenya works to ensure that not just the monetary policy of our financial system is stable as the current administration seeks to stabilize the economy, but also the supervisory role of the central bank is actively involved in the day-to-day supervision of banks, Honorable Speaker. And talking about banks, Honorable Speaker, this goes also into other financial sector institutions that are governed under the Central Bank Act. And particularly, Honorable Speaker, having under this administration established the Hustler Fund. You know, Honorable Speaker, before we had issues with predatory lenders, especially in the digital space. And I'm glad that this now has been sorted out by the Hustler Fund, that to a large extent now Kenyans can be able to borrow money, not by going to Shylocks, but just dialing the prefix digits for the Hustler Fund and accessing funds without having to know anybody, Honorable Speaker. And this is a progression, Honorable Speaker, that we want to see central bank encouraging, even our banking sector players. That tomorrow, Honorable Speaker, you do not need to know any bank manager or any credit officer in a bank to access credit. Honorable Speaker, that banks will be encouraged now to develop products like the Hustler Fund, where business people, on the basis of their credit rating, can be able to borrow and access credit in this economy, Honorable Speaker, without necessarily having to know anybody. Honorable Speaker, as I speak about the supervisory role of not Parliament, but of the Central Bank of Kenya, in the past, Honorable Speaker, we have seen laxity. And Kenyans get surprised when a bank collapses and there is a run on the bank when Kenyans walk into that bank to try and withdraw their money, and they are told, oh, sorry, you can't withdraw your money, the bank is collapsing. Honorable Speaker, it is my prayer that under Andrew Musangi, the board will ensure that the supervisory role of the Central Bank of Kenya over the banking sector is efficient and effective. And that means they must do this work almost on a daily basis, Honorable Speaker. And it's not enough, Honorable Speaker, for Central Bank to officers to sit in the Central Bank of Kenya and expect to just review reports sent to them by the banking sector players. They must conduct impromptu checks on banks, and especially where it is said, Honorable Speaker, in English, by the English or whoever said it, Honorable Speaker, that where there is smoke, there is fire. So whenever Central Bank hears or smells smoke in any bank in this country, Honorable Speaker, they must know there is likely to be fire and be proactive to ensure that they safeguard the assets of the Kenyan people that they put in these banks. Honorable Speaker, let me not say much because it's just an approval process, but request members to indeed agree with the committee and support Mr. Andrew Mukita Musangi to now serve as the next chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya, as we encourage him to serve with diligence, serve with a high sense of integrity and a high sense of nationalism and patriotism, knowing that he's now charged with the responsibility of safeguarding huge assets, national assets, and assets belonging to many depositors in this country when he serves as the chair of the board of the Central Bank of Kenya. With those many remarks, I beg to support.
The Honourable Member for Funyula, Professor Wilberforce.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for this opportunity. On the onset, let me stand and say I support the committee report proposing the appointment of Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi as the chairman of the board of the Central Bank of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, in any organized economy, the central bank is truly central to the economic performance, truly central to the monetary stability, is truly central to capital formation. Just compared to the Federal Reserve of the United States of America, the Bank of England, and all over the world, Honorable Speaker, a failure by the central bank in the discharge of their mandate, the discharge of their functions, in issues of integrity and accountability, will send the economy in a spiral. That's why when we stand here today, Honorable Speaker, we support the appointment of Mr. Musangi, but we need to put it very clear to him and the entire fraternity management of the Central Bank of Kenya that have got a sacrosanct duty to ensure that this economy is running, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, he becomes the chair of the Central Bank at the most tumultuous moment in the life of this country. The exchange rate is heading to the north at 150 shillings for the dollar, high inflation rate, Honorable Speaker, high credit squeeze in the market, Honorable Speaker, because the national government has decided to compete with the local mwananchi for the limited financial resources in the market. Honorable Speaker, we are faced with the spiraling cost of living, and these are now the things, Honorable Speaker, the monetary policy. As they said, the monetary policy, they must put in mind that the economy is on deathbed. They need to get into place and ensure things are moving. Honorable Speaker, in this country, we need to create capital. We need to create debt to enable us run businesses. Honorable Speaker, that has not been happening at the Central Bank of late, because many times when they stand up, they always increase the monetary policy committee, they always increase the rate, the base rate. So consequently, the rate at the banks always increase. Honorable Speaker, it's time they also looked at the strength and the health of the various banking institutions in this country. They also need to look into the informal lending institutions in this country, the Shylocks, those informal lending institutions that are truly pulverizing our people. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support the appointment.
The Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support the report from the committee. And Honorable Speaker, I just want to say that Wakili Andrew Misangi, having myself worked in the banking industry and having interacted with him in terms of his assistance and support to a lot of the commercial banks on policy reforms, I also want to support him. And my wish list to him, Honorable Speaker, is that as he assumes office to chair the Central Bank board, I want to tell him that because, especially with his background as a lawyer, and the fact that the board is actually determined, and one of the key functions is in terms of policy management, I just want to give him a wish list because I know he's a competent man. And one of the things that we are grappling with, Honorable Speaker, is that we don't have stability in terms of our currency. That is one of the areas that he needs to take very serious consideration into. Number two, it is in the area of treasury bills and treasury bonds, because, Honorable Speaker, we are one of the few countries that have a lot of Kenyans who invest in this space, but this space is not digitalized, and sometimes it takes too long. It takes you up to 30 days in this country for you to be able to initiate and start the process of actually investing in treasury bonds. And I want to urge Wakili, as he takes office, to ensure that this particular process is digitalized. Honorable Speaker, in the cryptocurrency space, right now in our country, we do not recognize the cryptocurrency as a legal tender. This is another area that we are lagging behind, Honorable Speaker, and I just want to encourage the incoming chair to ensure that we at least fast track and enable our central bank to start recognizing cryptocurrencies as a legal tender so that we can then have more Kenyans operating in this space. And number two, so that Kenyans can have guarantee that they have the backing of their central bank when they're operating in this space. Because right now, as it stands, Honorable Speaker, yes, we do have Kenyans who are operating cryptocurrencies, for example, the Bitcoin, but the problem is, were there to be any risks associated with cryptocurrency, then they wouldn't have any legal backing because it's not recognized as a legal tender. Therefore, I just want to encourage the chair that one of the quick policy reforms that he should undertake is to ensure that we are recognizing cryptocurrencies as a legal tender in our country. And finally, Honorable Speaker, I just want to also say that because of the digital space that we now find ourselves operating in, and because we do not have sufficient laws that enable us to place ourselves properly in the dynamic nature of the digital reforms, I want to encourage the chair that together with the CEO of the Capital Markets Authority, together with the Communication Authority, that as a country we need to fast track and ensure that we have a digital sandbox that will enable us as a country to be able to safeguard our people against any risks and advances that come with the nature of not being properly prepared in the digital space and not having the proper reforms. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I'd like to support and wish the incoming chair all the best. I thank you.
Member for Gilgil, Honorable Martha Wangari.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to support this report.
And let's try to keep it brief so that more people can have an opportunity.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I will be very brief. I support the nomination of Andrew Musangi to be the chair of CBK. And Madam Speaker, the role and the duties of this board is already cut out, because to ensure a good fiscal health of our country, Madam Speaker, this will be very critical and it will be at the center of it. And even the issues to stabilize debt, Madam Speaker, the issue of management of the country's foreign reserves and exchange would be very key. But what I want to contribute to, Madam Speaker, number one, is that we expect better communication strategy from the bank to the people. And Madam Speaker, the reason I say this is that we have very many banks that have gone down or have collapsed, and members of the public have to know this through Twitter or through bloggers, and the following day they are up in arms lining up to take their money, and it ends up becoming a crisis, Madam Speaker. So to actually insulate the populace and to actually protect the monies, because even as in this Kenya Kwanza government, Madam Speaker, we are trying to encourage saving culture of members of the public. But Madam Speaker, if you cannot be sure that your money is safe in a bank, then you end up just having no option, Madam Speaker. So I hope that the new the new central bank board will be excellent in communication. And Madam Speaker, this Andrew Musangi's career has spanned over 25 years, Madam Speaker. And he has been in very high-profile positions in the public domain. So in terms of having the competence, we don't doubt it, Madam Speaker. I just hope that this can be imported, better communication as the lawyer he is. Let us be able to advise our public and not leave them to be able to know these things from the bloggers, to lose money in microfinances, to lose money in cryptocurrency, which is not very well regulated. And Madam Speaker, the other issue that I hope to see is the opening, and I watched his interview, Madam Speaker, and so the issue of money laundering, the issue of corruption. If we are going to stem and deal with corruption, central banks should be at the center of ensuring that we know how exactly money is being laundered in terms of movement in this country, Madam Speaker. The issue of oversight in AIA or appropriation in aid, Madam Speaker, must have central bank at the center of it. So I want to take this opportunity to also wish him all the best and support the report of the committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Before we go next, allow me to recognize the presence of St. Teresa Boys High School, Kabula, from Bumula constituency, Bungoma County. And I think I will now allow I'll allow Honorable Wamboka from Bumula, member for Bumula.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker.
Brief so that more people can have an opportunity.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. May I take this opportunity to officially invite our boys from Bumula, St. Teresa's Kabula, in this August House, and that I'm proud, Madam Speaker, to be associated with this school. It is one of my centers of excellence, and they have done well. In my constituency, they have made us proud. In the last examination, they took 47 students to university, and they exceedingly continue to perform well, Honorable Speaker. I'm sure when they go back home, they will be able to appraise themselves of what they have seen in terms of rules and procedures of this House. And in future, we may see MPs and the presidents out of this lot of my boys. Welcome, Wana Teresa Kabula. Asante sana. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping it brief. The member for Buri, Honorable Mugambi, and let's keep it brief, as we said.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the appointment of the nominee, Ms. Msangi, to the position of the Chairman of Central Bank. Madam Speaker, the Central Bank plays a critical role in the management of fiscal programs in this country. Madam Speaker, it requires somebody with understanding and knowledge and the capacity to do so. I believe the academic qualifications and experiences of this nominee are certified that he is going to do a great job for this country. Madam Speaker, there is a time when you almost lost the relationship between the fiscal management policy of this country and the other parts of the economy. Madam Speaker, this candidate has demonstrated the ability to bring the interaction between the currency management and the other activities of the economy. Madam Speaker, it is our wish that this candidate will be fast forward in thinking, because there are so many new developments in the fiscal arena of our economy. I therefore, Madam Speaker, support and hope that he is going to take the seat, looking forward, because really this country needs to be guided. Somebody said communication is key, and I hope this chairman is not going to be like other chairmen who just take the position and vanish within the offices. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Bernard Ochieng, and again keep it brief.
Boss. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the nomination of Andrew Mukite Musangi as chairperson of CBK board. Madam Speaker, just to remind Councillor Andrew that he becomes chair of the CBK board, a very volatile. Madam Speaker, I can't be able to hear myself because of. I'm not able to hear myself, so I can't contribute.
Kindly keep your consultations low.
So Madam Speaker, it's a very volatile economic environment, and Madam Speaker, in this environment, banks are making very heavy profits, yet Kenyans are suffering, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you have seen where we have lenders who are taking motorcycles from Kenyans, predatory lenders who are not able to look at the economy and say that we need to build this economy by allowing borrowers to pay in a manner that reflects their earnings, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to note, Madam Speaker, that in the last 3-4 years alone, the interest rates have risen very steadily, Madam Speaker, even as the economy goes down, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, financial inclusion is something that is very key, but we cannot assume that because of M-Pesa, we've reached a level where everyone else is included, Madam Speaker. We need to ensure that inclusion includes being able to access credit at rates that encourage economic activity, does not kill the goose that lays the golden egg, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as you speak, the shilling is on a free fall. We are looking upon the CBK and the CBK board to help us, help the country, so that we're able to trade without the inhibitions of the strengthening dollar, Madam Speaker. I support the nomination of Andrew Mukite Musangi.
The Honorable Member for Rangwe, Lilian Gogo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I also rise to support the nomination of Advocate Musangi to be chairperson of the Central Bank of Kenya. And at the time that he's being nominated and eventually, if approved, is going to take office, Honorable Speaker is getting into office at a time that Kenya has so many issues. Honorable Speaker, our students studying abroad are suffering because of the dollar rate to the Kenya shilling. When we do our exports, Honorable Speaker, the return on the value of our export is very low because of the exchange rate, Honorable Speaker, and we can barely make profit. So as I rise to support this, Honorable Speaker, I would urge the nominee to really take Kenya at heart, think of the poor Kenyans who are depending on him to stabilize the economy from point of information. I know he's a strong team. I know the deputy the deputy governor of Central Bank, the Honorable former PS, Dr. Susan, is a personal friend of mine, and the governor also. And I know it's a strong team that is going to work to the best interest of Kenyans. So I support Honorable Speaker, and I hope that they sail through and run our country positively, especially on bringing up our economy to where it should be. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Edward Muriu, member for Gitanga.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I rise to support the nomination of Mr. Musangi. And Madam Speaker, I want to support with a point of knowledge that Mr. Mukite Musangi is a lawyer of reputation of many years. He has been running very serious law firm. He has been a director in various organizations of reputation, and therefore, Madam Speaker, he is fit and proper to be the chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya. Madam Speaker, on my support, I also want to challenge the board of the Central Bank for two reasons. Number one, Madam Speaker, we have just rescued 8 million Kenyans from the predatory lenders whereby they were listed in the CRB, Madam Speaker. Therefore, the board of Central Bank need to make sure that those predatory lenders do not come back again, to remove 8 million Kenyans who we have been able to put back in the economy through Hustler Fund. Secondly, Madam Speaker, there is an issue about the depositors' funds, especially for the Imperial Bank, Chase Bank, and other banks which has been closed, and those depositors have been suffering. But Madam Speaker, I also want to put a challenge to the chairman to ensure that the depositors' funds, they are fully paid, to ensure that their hard-earned savings is saved from loss. Madam Speaker, I support this nomination. Thank you.
Honorable Member for Luanda, Honorable Dick Maungu. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise on standing order number 95, Madam Speaker, to request your indulgence that the point of discussion seems to be concurrence. Therefore, seek to request that you call the mover to reply.
Is that the mood of the House? Okay, mover then to reply.
Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the members who have contributed immensely to this particular motion. As a departmental committee that oversights Central Bank, we take keenly the remarks that honorable members have said. We take keenly the remarks on interest rates in this country and making sure that banks actually have competitive interest rates. We take interest in what members have said about safeguarding the deposits of members, where members have talked about some banks have had deposits of members disappear mysteriously in their bank accounts. Interestingly, Honorable Speaker, the nominee, the chairperson, told us that I think it is late father was also a culprit of fraudulent bank transaction where money was withdrawn from his late father's bank account. And therefore, as a departmental committee in charge of oversighting Central Bank, we'll make sure that we put the chairperson to task and the bank to task to make sure that they deliver their mandates as per the Central Bank Kenya Act. And with that, I beg to reply, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, honorable members, I now put the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly, a Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget, in its report on the vetting of the nominee for the appointment as chairperson of the Board of Directors of Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of this House on Thursday, 14th September 2023, and pursuant to Section 11(2)(a) of the Central Bank of Kenya Act, Cap 491, and Section 8(1) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Mr. Andrew Mukite Musangi as the chairperson of the Board of the Central Bank of Kenya. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 14, the Privatization Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2023. Second reading. The Privatization Bill 2023, a bill for an act of Parliament to provide for regulatory framework for the privatization of public entities, to establish the Privatization Authority, and for connected purposes.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that the Privatization Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2023, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, this Privatization Bill 2023 is formulated, Honorable Speaker, as the next generation legal framework that, amongst other things, seeks to overcome the shortcomings and challenges that were associated with the current law, that is a Privatization Act that was enacted in the year 2005. Honorable Speaker, prior to the coming into effect of the Privatization Act of 2005, privatization transactions of the government were guided by the policy paper on public enterprises reforms and privatization of 1998, with the then Permanent Secretary to the Treasury Incorporation Act as the legal framework. In an effort, Honorable Speaker, to enhance transparency in the privatization transactions, the Privatization Act of 2005 was assented to in the year 2005. However, it was not until the year 2008 that this law came into effect. The Act, Honorable Speaker, established the Privatization Commission, whose mandate is to implement privatization. The objectives of the privatization, as envisaged in this Act, Honorable Speaker, are: one, to improve on the infrastructure and delivery of public services by the involvement of private capital and expertise. Two is towards the reduction of the demand for government resources, and also to generate additional government revenues by receiving compensation for privatizations, amongst other objectives. Honorable Speaker, in realization of the objectives of the Privatization Act as enacted in 2005, and as I mentioned, that came into effect in 2008, the principal objectives, as I have stated, of engaging in privatization endeavors by government is: one, to divest, or rather government to divest from commercial enterprises, Honorable Speaker, with the objective of: one, raising resources for government; two, Honorable Speaker, as you have seen with the privatization of many enterprises, government or state-owned enterprises, is to enhance efficiency in the operations of these institutions or organizations, Honorable Speaker, by injecting: one, private capital, Honorable Speaker, where government is limited in terms of the amount of capital that you can inject into state corporations, but also to inject, other than capital, Honorable Speaker, private sector expertise into the running of state-owned enterprises, and therefore enhancing efficiency and delivery of services to the public. And Honorable Speaker, I think the most effective of this privatization, Honorable Speaker, came in the privatization of what was then the Kenya Posts and Telecommunications Corporation, KPTC, that was at one time headed, I think, by the Honorable Chepkonga, on one of the offshoots, was headed by the Honorable Chepkonga, I think, CAK. And Honorable Speaker, the huge investments you have seen in the telecom sector, Honorable Speaker, after the privatization of KPTC, or the Kenya Posts and Telecommunications Corporation, Honorable Speaker, is what led to what now is Safaricom, Honorable Speaker, Telcom, as we know it today. And as I mentioned, Honorable Speaker, the injection of private capital when the investors that came into Safaricom invested in Safaricom. That is how we have seen the country grow in leaps and bounds in terms of the telecoms sector. And you can imagine, Honorable Speaker, had we not privatized this sector, or KPTC as it were then, we would not have benefited from the private sector capital that came through Vodafone and other investors, including members of the public who have invested in Safaricom and other state-owned corporations. And I'm just using Safaricom as an example, Honorable Speaker, being one of our success stories of what has come out of the privatization efforts over the years. Honorable Speaker, however, as it turned out, the Privatization Act of 2005 has been as facilitative for privatization transaction as was, or rather has not been as effective as was contemplated by the Act. And in particular, Honorable Speaker, lengthy privatization processes have required a large layer of approval of decisions at various stages, and this has made the process of privatization very inefficient. In fact, Honorable Speaker, looking at the process, in 2008, Honorable Speaker, after coming into effect of the Privatization Act, Honorable Speaker, 28 corporations were listed for privatization. And Honorable Speaker, out of these 28 corporations that were listed for privatization in 2008, in fact, Honorable Speaker, it was 26 entities that were approved by Parliament for privatization in 2008 under the privatization program, as approved then. Only one, Honorable Speaker, and it is one out of 26 entities that were listed for privatization, only the Kenya Wine Agencies Limited has been undertaken. And that, Honorable Speaker, speaks to the issues I'm speaking to of inefficiencies under the 2005 Privatization Act. And Honorable Speaker, it's not just the layer of approvals that were required and the bureaucracies that came with it, Honorable Speaker, but also a litany of court cases, Honorable Speaker, that have bedeviled the privatization process. And Honorable Speaker, protracted court proceedings are amongst these challenges, Honorable Speaker, that have resulted in the slow implementation of privatization. There also have been undue delays in implementation process, as I said, due to the multiple layer of approvals required by various institutions, and also delays in the provision of information during privatization, Honorable Speaker, from the entities themselves. And therefore, this new legal framework under this privatization bill seeks to deal with some of these hurdles and challenges. One, to create efficiencies in the provision of information and even in the formulation of privatization programs to ensure, Honorable Speaker, that once a program is approved, then the multi-layer approvals, including, Honorable Speaker, approval, and I've just had a discussion with the chair of the committee because I'm aware the committee had other views in terms of the approval processes by Parliament. And Honorable Speaker, Parliament has a role in a privatization process because these are public entities. And I want to agree with the committee that indeed Parliament must have a role as the people charged with oversight of public resources. Public resources have been deployed in the investments that are state-owned corporations. And therefore, if you are to sell or if you are to privatize these state-owned corporations, then Parliament must have a role in government being able to divest from those entities, Honorable Speaker, to ensure, one, that there is actual and active public participation in these processes as was envisaged by our Constitution. Honorable Speaker, however, the Constitution never envisaged a process where then Parliament also becomes a hindrance to the efficiency of such privatization engagements, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, part of the reasons that, again, Honorable Speaker, that informed this new legal framework under the current Privatization Act, it was required that even the Privatization Commission, which, Honorable Speaker, is not a constitutional commission, ought to have been approved by Parliament. Honorable Speaker, under the 2010 Constitution, because this law was done before the 2010 Constitution, under the 2010 Constitution, it became a prerequisite that only independent constitutional commissions would require the prior approval of Parliament before people taking into office. Honorable Speaker, this new act or this new bill, the privatization bill, bill number 22 of 2023, seeks to address some of those issues. That since the Privatization Commission is not a constitutional commission, then we must not make it mandatory that members of this commission be approved by the National Assembly. However, I am in agreement with the committee that for the privatization program, that then there is a case for the involvement of Parliament because it involves public resources. But for the appointment of commissioners to the commission, that, Honourable Speaker, may not require the approval of Parliament because in line with the Constitution of 2010, only independent constitutional commissions require the approval of Parliament. Honourable Speaker, this new bill seeks now to succeed, or rather to create a new body, the Privatization Authority. Honourable Speaker, I think they're calling it the Privatization Authority. And this Privatization Authority, Honourable Speaker, will be the successor of the Privatization Commission. And this authority, Honourable Speaker, again, the proposal was that this being just an authority and will be governed by a board, that board does not necessarily, just like all other boards to state entities, they never require parliamentary approval. And I think we have had consultations with the chair and the committee that we do agree with what is provided for in the bill, that the board then can be set up without necessarily coming to the National Assembly or to Parliament for approval. However, Parliament has a role in oversighting that board in their dealings in matters to do with privatization. And again, Honourable Speaker, as I have stated, that is where I want to agree with the committee that when it comes to the privatization program, then Parliament ought to have a role. Honourable Speaker, this authority, once established, will have certain functions, and amongst some of the functions of this authority will include advising the government on all aspects of privatization of public entities. It will also be facilitating the implementation of the government policies on privatization and implementing specific privatization proposals in accordance with the privatization program. Honourable Speaker, Part 2 of this bill is what members will see provides for the function of this board, and also the function of the Cabinet Secretary, which will include providing policy direction on matters related to privatization and developing and formulating the privatization program, which, Honourable Speaker, I'm saying that is where now, as we go into the third reading or committee of the whole, Honourable Speaker, we should look at how we can then get Parliament or the people's representatives being involved, either in the approval of the privatization program or the policies as the CS will formulate. This part of Part 2 of the bill, Honourable Speaker, also provides for the appointment and functions of the Managing Director, the Corporation Secretary, and staff of the authority. Part 3 of the bill, Honourable Speaker, deals with the privatization program. And if you go to clause 18, Honourable Speaker, of the bill, it provides that a privatization program shall be formulated by the Cabinet Secretary in accordance with the Act, that is the Privatization Act, and approved by Cabinet. It will specify the public entities identified and approved for privatization and serve as a basis upon which the privatization shall be undertaken. This part also, Honourable Speaker, makes provisions for the formulation of the program, which includes identification of entities to be included in the privatization program in line with the considerations, public consultations during development and notification of, by Parliament before implementation of the program. It further specifies the validity period of the program as not exceeding 5 years from the date of gazettement, and such validity may only be extended for a further 12 months or a further 1 year. Therefore, such a program, Honourable Speaker, in line with this part, means that a privatization program can only run to a maximum of 6 years. Honourable Speaker, you can imagine the privatization program of 2008 of those 26 state corporations. As I've mentioned, only QAL, or the Kenya Wines Agencies, has been successful, and the program has been in existence from 2008
we are now in the year 2023, that is 15 years later. We are now putting a time limit under this new act that such a privatization program can only run for 5 years. And if within 5 years you have government has not finished that program, they can only seek a further extension of only 12 months to be able to conclude that program. So that, again, Honorable Speaker, we ensure that there is efficiency in the privatization of state-owned entities. Honorable Speaker, there is a reason as to why there is a time limit, Honorable Speaker. And this is informed by the fact that for you to be able to derive actual value from state entities that you want to privatize, then time is of essence, Honorable Speaker. Not just in terms of the time value of money, but also, Honorable Speaker, you can imagine there are entities or state-owned entities whose value today will not be the same 15 years down the line. And therefore, there are state entities that government envisaged to privatize 15 years ago, and we have derived very good value out of those state entities. But because of advancement in technology and changes in the global economy, some of those state entities have now become moribund, and even the technologies they are applying, Honorable Speaker, are not technologies, Honorable Speaker, that would derive value in today's world. And therefore, the Kenyan people or the public will not derive the true value of an entity if the process is so protracted and runs for 15 years, as was happening under the old Privatization Act. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, under this new privatization bill, we will seek to ensure that there are timelines, strict timelines, under which to implement a privatization program. So that if you are privatizing, for instance, a technology-based company, you do not take 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, and by the time you are seeking to privatize, the value of that company has dropped to almost negligible figures, and therefore the public loses value. The intent of this bill, Honorable Speaker, if it becomes an act, Honorable Speaker, is to ensure that we derive value at the right time when we can derive the maximum value out of the state-owned enterprises that we seek to privatize. And I do hope, Honorable Speaker, that members will support this bill to ensure that we never lose value. Honorable Speaker, you have seen how the Honorable Angwe has been active in pushing through the sugar bill. You can imagine, Honorable Speaker, if, for instance, the sugar companies in the Western Kenya belt and parts of the coast were privatized, say, 10, 15 years ago, the value we would have derived out of those sugar companies, that some that we have been just talking about their privatization, but it has never happened. And I want to pray, Honorable Speaker, that this time round we shall get it right. So that, Honorable Speaker, we do not punish another generation. We have wasted 15 years trying to privatize state-owned entities. Some, Honorable Speaker, if you visit some of those state-owned entities that were earmarked for privatization, they are basically dead, Honorable Speaker. Some today, if you were to privatize them today, you would sell them for a song or for no value, Honorable Speaker. But had we done it at the right time, Honorable Speaker, we'd have derived value for the public. Those entities would have become more efficient. We would have been able to deploy private capital, therefore enhancing efficiency in the operations of those entities. We'd have been able to deploy private expertise or expertise from the private sector. Honorable Speaker, I mentioned the sugar industry because it is one such case where, Honorable Speaker, whether you go to Mumias, whether you go to Nzoia, whether it is Sony Sugar, Honorable Speaker, you'll be shocked that the kind of equipment that is in those sugar companies, Honorable Speaker, are so moribund and inefficient that it becomes so expensive to run those entities. And that is the reason why you will see the people of Mumias, every successive administration from the Kibaki administration to the Kenyatta administration, now with the exception of the Ruto administration, has pumped money into Mumias. But what have we derived out of the money that we have pumped into Mumias, Honorable Speaker? Absolutely nothing. So we have wasted a lot of public resources pumping into inefficient entities, Honorable Speaker, and that is what is informing this privatization bill, that we will enhance the efficiency with which we privatize state-owned entities so that we deploy private capital, private expertise, private technology from the private sector, Honorable Speaker. If we had deployed private expertise in Mumias, Honorable Speaker, the cartels that have been running the sugar sector in Kenya would have been driven out of business years ago. And I must take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to commend His Excellency the President. Because he has said, and he has told these cartels that there are only 3 things to do in this country. And in those words, Honorable Speaker, if I may quote him, he has said, mambo ni matatu. And in this mambo ni matatu, Honorable Speaker, because we have been speaking about the fight against corruption, Honorable Speaker. And I say speaking, Honorable Speaker, because all we have done in this country is to speak about the fight against corruption. Nobody has been bold enough to act on issues corruption. I must commend the President because he has indeed shown the country that with the mambo ni matatu, he intends to act on corruption, not to speak about corruption. Honorable Speaker, you remember in the last regime, at one point during a State of the Nation address, the former president, speaking about corruption, fired over 200 public officers, many of whom ended up getting back into public service because we are all accustomed to speaking about corruption. Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Kajwang, what's out of order?
Madam Speaker, the majority leader is referring to what we have had out there as mambo matatu. Mambo ni matatu. Can majority leader confirm that he is encouraging extrajudicial killing or people being sentenced to prison without judicial trial, or others deported to places without judicial, without procedure, due procedure, sending to heaven, sending to heaven, or sending to jail without judicial processes. Does that confirm that the majority leader is encouraging those practices?
Majority leader, did you encourage extrajudicial killings?
You know, Honorable Speaker, you know, my good friend TJ, knows I have never encouraged anything extrajudicial. In fact, under the last regime, when people were cheering extrajudicial killings, when bodies were being fished out of River Yala, when young men and women were being executed for supporting the then deputy president and their bodies dumped in their badeas, I was among the few Kenyans, very few, Honorable Speaker, who had the courage, when the Honorable TJ could not master that courage, to speak truth to power, that you cannot kill Kenyans for supporting or taking a certain political inclination or supporting a deputy president. Honorable Speaker, the book of Ezra 7:26 is what I would just want to read for my good friend TJ, who I know is a Christian, because it's called Tom Joseph Kajwang. Therefore, Honorable Tom Joseph Kajwang, the book of Ezra 26, Ezra 7:26, says that whoever does not obey the law of your God and the law of the king must surely be punished by death, banishment, confiscation of property, or imprisonment. Mambo ni matatu. Honorable Speaker, the Holy Book, in the book of Ezra, speaks about banishment for those who do not obey the law. If you engage in corruption, you must be banished.
Majority Leader, Honorable Kajwang, what is out of order?
Now, Madam Speaker, the debate is getting lively, but the Majority Leader is really getting it rough. Because first of all, now he's postulating that the laws of this country are being led by Torah, and he is now giving a Christian background to demonstrate that extrajudicial killing and the rule of kingship, that perhaps is even right, that the regime in which we are under is a kingdom led by the kings, and if you dare face the king, then you are banished or you die. Is that the position that the Majority Leader is espousing?
Majority, Honorable Sunkuli, what is out of order?
What is out of order, Madam Speaker, is that the Honorable Ishungwa, the Leader of Majority, needs to explain to us, maybe, because he's quite knowledgeable, of how the third option of going to heaven can be exercised without death. And also, Madam Speaker, to explain to us how Ezra, written 5,000 years ago, applies in a situation where democracy is now reigning. Because during the days of Ezra, there was only one person. That was God, and the other person was the king. Here, we have neither the king, and God is for us all. But I'm more interested in knowing whether he also believes that there is a way of going to heaven like the Holy Mary.
You've made your point. I don't know how you know who was there, but Majority Leader, continue.
Honorable Speaker, you know, now the Honorable Sunkuli is inviting me into a class of theology. And because I am a Christian, member number 39 of Gikambura District of the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, Reverend Musagitao PCA Church, I will invite the Honorable Sunkuli to my church during one of the cell group meetings, and I'll take him on a class on theology, so that he knows when the Bible speaks about the king is the Lord, not the earthly kings. And that also answers Honorable TJ. When the Bible speaks about banishment for the corrupt, for the sugar cartels, that is why they have been told mambo ni matatu: uhame Kenya, uende jela, ama utafute tikiti ya kwenda binguni. If you want to find a ticket to heaven, accept the Lord and know corruption is evil. And I want to invite the Honorable TJ, the Honorable Sunkuli, and all our other colleagues, please accept to get the ticket to heaven by not just speaking about corruption, but acting against corruption. These sugar cartels, Honorable Speaker, rode on state capture in the last regime. And Honorable Speaker, because we are talking about those three things, those three choices, Honorable Speaker, probably I would add a fourth option, that maybe it is time that we now begin to have the conversation on the establishment of a state capture commission, so that this country gets the opportunity to truly interact with what has actually bedeviled the fabric of our nation in the economic management of our resources, our national resources, Honorable Speaker. Because it is sad that as political leaders, we shout from the rooftops and shout loudly about our fight against corruption. But when it comes to acting on issues corruption, we are the first to use politics to defend the corrupt. We are the first
to use state capture to advance our own selfish business interests at the expense of the greater public good, Honorable Speaker. Maybe it is time, Honorable Speaker, we began to have that conversation as a country. Because probably we have never gotten it right on the fight against corruption, because we always tend to politicize it. And I want to repeat, Honorable Speaker, those three choices are open, not to Kenyans, not to good Kenyans, not to law-abiding Kenyans, not to hard-working Kenyans, but those options are open to the corrupt, those who believe that they can use their offices in public office as state officers to enrich themselves at the expense of the people who put them in those offices, Honorable Speaker. And that is why I'm saying maybe it is time, and I want to invite the Honorable TJ to join us and other Kenyans who believe that it is time to have that conversation on state capture, and maybe establish a state capture commission. Honorable Speaker, I would have ignored what the Honorable TJ is saying, that he has no shares in that company. I do not know which company, but I know, because I can hear what he's saying from his position. He's speaking about none other than the Deputy President, who has spoken about shareholding in government. And Honorable Speaker, without defending the Deputy President, because this thing also has been taken out of context. The Deputy President indicated that you are shareholders in government, not in Kenya. Government is established by those who are elected by the people to govern. You subscribe your shares into a government by voting for that government. But you remain a Kenyan and you remain a shareholder in Kenya, including the corrupt, who we are telling they will either be banished, jail, or they will find a ticket to heaven. Whichever way they find a ticket to heaven, whether be it through salvation, be it through restitution by giving back what they have taken from the Kenyan people, and seeking forgiveness from the Almighty God and the people of Kenya. You may find your way to heaven in many ways, Honorable TJ and Honorable Sunkuli. I want to beseech you, if you know those cartels, if you speak to the masters of doublespeak, the merchants of state capture, if you have a direct line to them, please tell them time is nigh. But Honorable Speaker, going back to this bill, because this bill will address some of those issues. So that, Honorable Speaker, you will remember in the last parliament, and Honorable TJ is fortunate to have been with me in the last parliament. You remember the issues to do with the Kenya shipping line. You will remember the retrogressive laws that we made sure never saw the light of day. And I must thank the Honorable TJ, because on the National Aviation Bill, he was very emphatic that we must not use state capture to privatize state-owned corporations like the Kenya Airports Authority in order to achieve selfish family and private interests, as was envisaged under the National Aviation Bill that came to us and the Honorable TJ in the last parliament. Honorable TJ and members, honorable members, I want to invite you that this is a law that will ensure never again in this country shall a president, and I repeat again, Honorable Speaker, never again shall a president in this country use his office, use state capture to advance the interests of a family or his own private interests, or indeed, for that matter, any member of the executive. This House must take its place to ensure that we play our oversight role, to ensure that never again shall anybody in the executive use state capture to take over state-owned entities. That the privatization program, as approved, will be followed to the letter and within strict timelines to ensure that value is realized not for private entities, not for private individuals or families, but for the people who own these state-owned enterprises. Because these state-owned enterprises are not government entities. These are public entities owned by the people of Kenya, Honorable Speaker, and we must protect them. We must ensure that if they are to be sold, they are not sold for a song. The people of Webuye will tell you in Western Kenya, in Bungoma County, they will tell you what happened to Webuye paper mills. And it is the same cartels under state capture, Honorable Speaker, that utilize state capture in the pretext of privatization to take over Webuye paper mills. They have killed all our sugar industries, state-owned sugar industries, to advance the private interests of private sugar mills, Honorable Speaker. And you do that because you know you are protected by those in power. Honorable Speaker, it is my submission today that those things now will become a thing of the past. And I want to invite all members of this House, Honorable Speaker, not only to support this bill, Honorable Speaker, not only to speak about corruption, but to act against corruption. Let us not be excited in defending the corrupt. Let us not be so quick to rise, not only to defend, but to protect cartels that are injuring and killing our people in Western Kenya and other parts of the country through corruption, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I have said too much, probably more than I should have said, but this bill, Honorable Speaker, speaks volumes as to how we will ensure that we privatize our state-owned entities, derive maximum value for our people, enhance efficiency in the provision of services through these corporations, utilize private capital and private expertise in the running of state-owned enterprises, Honorable Speaker, grow wealth, not just for those that invest in these state entities, but also grow wealth for our country, Honorable Speaker. And more importantly, Honorable Speaker, ensure that the Kenyan people indeed enjoy the fruits of their labor, because it is their labor that has provided taxes that have been invested in these state-owned entities. And therefore, through their elected representatives, Honorable Speaker, they will be able to oversight how these entities are privatized. They will be able to oversight how the executive rolls out the programs in a time-bound program, as I said, in 5 years, as has been stipulated in the bill, with a possible extension of only 1 year, so that we never see what has happened over the last 15 years, that we had a program to privatize 26 state-owned enterprises, and 15 years down the line, we have only been able to actualize one. I pray, Honorable Speaker, that this Parliament will midwife a new legal framework that will see us privatize state-owned enterprises, so that also as we appropriate resources, Honorable Speaker, we no longer have to appropriate national government resources towards the running of state-owned enterprises, which, if they were injected with private capital and we brought in private sector expertise in the running of those enterprises, they would be contributors to the exchequer, like Safaricom today is contributing to the exchequer, not taking away money to the exchequer. I look forward, Honorable Speaker, to a time when our sugar companies that are state-owned Mumias will not be looking for money from the exchequer. Mumias will be contributing money to the exchequer. Kenya Airways, Honorable Speaker, will not be gobbling 20, 30 billion shillings of our exchequer resources almost every financial year, but we'll be putting back 30, 50 billion shillings back into the exchequer as dividends, Honorable Speaker, even as they pay dividends to those who will have invested in them privately, Honorable Speaker. And with those, Honorable Speaker, in closing, that is the last objective of the privatization of state-owned entities, to ensure that we no longer have to appropriate our national resources to run state-owned enterprises, but to inject efficiency, inject private capital and private expertise to be able to derive more value out of these entities as they contribute to the exchequer, Honorable Speaker. And I look forward to that day very soon. And I'm sure under the able leadership of President William Ruto and his cabinet, and with the able support of all well-meaning members of parliament who shall not defend corruption, who shall not defend cartels, we will see that day come when we shall no longer invest money in KQ, but KQ will be giving the government of Kenya money. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to move and request the chair of the Finance and Planning Committee, who together with this committee have done a commendable job in processing this bill and taking it through public participation, to second. And let me, in closing, take this opportunity to thank the Finance and Planning Committee through its very able chair, the member for Molo, for the work that they put in, and look forward to the
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable Kimani Kuria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the privatization bill be read a second time, or to second that the privatization bill be read a second time. And maybe before I do, the good debate the Leader of Majority had with TJ Kajwang on Ezra, I would refer them to the book of Ezra, chapter 7, verse 8 to 10, that describes who Ezra was. And as a renowned lawyer, TJ Kajwang should really benefit from the great knowledge of the gentleman called Ezra in matters of law, and where he dedicated all his life to teaching the law. Having said that, Madam Speaker, before setting out the specific provisions of this bill, let me try to bring an understanding why we are here we are today. Privatization, Honorable Speaker, of state-owned enterprises refers to the process of transferring ownership and control of government-owned or state-run agencies to private individuals or entities. This is often done, Madam Speaker, through the sale of shares or assets of these enterprises to private investors or companies. The primary goal, Honorable Speaker, of privatization is to prove efficiency, reducing the fiscal burden in the government, promoting competition, and enhancing economic growth. Honorable Speaker, privatization finds itself on several economic theories, and without turning this into an economic class, there are three particular theories that I found very useful in the matter of privatization. The first is the public choice theory, as written by one Buchan in 1972. Honorable Speaker, this writer actually says that public-owned entities end up performing poorly because they are led by politicians. And the greatest motivation of politicians is getting votes. And therefore, when faced with a decision of getting votes or enhancing efficiency of that institution, a politician will always choose votes. And that is therefore why, as per public choice theory, these public-owned entities actually fade. And that is why it is in the best interest of the country that they be privatized. Honorable Speaker, we have the property rights theory, which says that shareholders are residual claimants to profit in an enterprise or in a company. So if I am a shareholder in a company and I sit on the board of that company, I want to get more profit from that institution. But who are those that sit in the board of these companies? most of the time, the shareholder called GOK is represented at the board by either the principal secretary or the cabinet secretary for that line ministry. The problem with this is that usually in private enterprises, as a shareholder, you want to maximize your profit. But here, the profit does not come to yourself as a person. And therefore, the effort that you'd expect that particular minister or PS to put in that particular institution is minimal, because this additional responsibility does not accrue any additional revenues for that particular officer. Madam Speaker, we have the agency theory. And the agency theory talks about that managers will always try to maximize their own utility. Like, as a manager, your best interest is not necessarily that of the shareholder, it is that of yourself as a manager of that institution. In the private sector, this agency theory is well taken care of because there is a competitive market for those managers. So those managers are competitively looked for in the market. There is incentives given, including salaries, including shareholding in those companies. You should check, for example, this payment that is made, the salary that is paid to CEOs of some of these institutions in Kenya. You know, the other day we were having a conversation with one of my colleagues who were together in university, who has risen up the financial markets or the financial institutions ladder, and I was surprised about how much money he's making in a month. To imagine that members of parliament are well paid, there are very many officers out there who are paid unimaginable salaries. So that reward system now takes care of the challenges of agency theory. But in public-owned institutions, these officers have to adhere to the job groups in government institutions. And whether that publicly owned enterprise makes how much money, there is no reward system, whether in terms of shares or better remuneration for those officers, which therefore makes the motivation that they have in those particular institutions very minimal. Honorable Speaker, the bill had proposed something that the committee really flagged out, that there would be a privatization program. And this privatization program, Honorable Speaker, is the program that states which institutions are going to be privatized when and how. But interestingly, the bill excluded the approval of Parliament. As a committee of the full House, Madam Speaker, this afternoon, I will be moving for amendment in our bill to include a proviso that privatization program must be approved by the National Assembly, Honorable Speaker. We have seen a myriad of problems in the privatization sector. Later this afternoon, we'll be debating the measures being put in place to revitalize sugar companies. And it's really a pity that a whole region, a whole western region that relied solely on sugarcane have approved they have uprooted their sugarcane, and they have no interest whatsoever in this sugar business. And really thank Honorable Wangwe for the steps you've taken, and we'll be discussing that later this afternoon and making sure that we revitalize these particular institutions, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, in light of the foregoing bill, it will serve what I will summarize as 4 important things. 1, to provide for the coordination and oversight of privatization matters. It is key to note that these institutions were created by taxpayers' money. That these institutions are the sweat of Kenyans that will be paid through their taxes that they had the establishment. It is therefore only fair that we have a proper legal framework that we provide now for not just the coordination, but most importantly, the oversight of that privatization. Honorable Speaker, this bill seeks to establish the formulation of the privatization program. That is number 2. Number 3, it makes a provision for the implementation of the program. And lastly, number 4, provides for how these agreements are supposed to be contained and implemented. Honorable Speaker, we've had a privatization commission existent for almost 15 years. It is really sad. When we met these stakeholders, we're asking them, for the last 10 years, you wake up, you go to the office. What do you do? When you go back home, why do you have a reason to wake up the following day? And the President Commission was sharing us the disappointment they have had every time they've come up with a program for privatization that has never seen the light of day. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, all the way to all those number of years. The establishment of this bill, Honorable Speaker, safeguards, it's important to mention, even though it repeals the current Privatization Act, it safeguards the jobs of those already working at the Commission and provides for a transition process, how they're going to transition from the Privatization Commission to the Privatization Authority as enshrined on the bill. Madam Speaker, the Privatization Bill, most importantly, would have a potential to render the High Court ruling, the position on Petition Gazette Notice number 8739 of 14 August 2009 redundant, because the issues that were raised in that court ruling as per the Privatization Act have now been addressed by this Privatization Bill. I would like to thank the Leader of Majority, because this is a government-sponsored bill, for making sure that this becomes timely, that we bring a sobriety, we bring efficiency, we bring competence in the privatization of our state-owned institutions. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, government is a terrible businessman across the world. And no government should do business that can be done by the private sector. So that is what is going to be addressed in this bill, and we hope that moving forward, the government of Kenya will only engage in those provision of those services that cannot be adequately provided by the private sector. For example, defending our boundaries, providing security, providing healthcare, providing education, but all those other services that can be competently and efficiently be done by the private sector actually get to be done by the private sector. Because studies across the world has shown that the best way to ensure efficiency is by making sure that state-owned companies are privatized and governments stick to their core business and leave the rest to the private sector. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second.
I therefore propose the question that the Privatization Bill, National Assembly Bill number 22 of 2023, be now read a second time. Honorable Dr. Pukose.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to support this bill. Madam Speaker, this is an important bill that we should be able to support, and I didn't have much to add into what the contributor has made. I support it.
Member for Tharaka.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. That was quite hilarious, that support. But support is support whichever way it comes, even the one-liner is good enough. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to support this bill, a very important bill in our country when it comes to privatization of entities that are supposed to be possibly government-owned. It's always a rider that the government does not have any farms, the government does not have any other property, and the only way the government raises its revenue is actually through taxation and borrowing. Because it is now proven that where government tries to invest into actual property, most of it go awry, as a result of which we have incompetent entities going around and unable to perform the functions for which they were performed. Even for the parastatals under the Parastatals Act, it is going to be that where they cannot perform, they should actually be privatized, and we have private people running private businesses for purposes of giving the government money. It is not the other way around, as stated by the leader of majority, that we have entities that are going to the government day after day begging for money so that they can be salvaged. We should actually close shop for all those entities, bring them up as private entities, and we start getting money from those entities. We have in mind, as it has been said, the sugar companies. The sugar companies now need to be privatized. It is the high time we got these companies producing sugar, that they are selling sugar from which we get taxes and revenue, as a result of which they continue to be going entities. KQ is another one. Definitely, we need to rethink about Kenya Airways. It is our national carrier. It has a very nice slogan, which makes us extremely proud because it's the pride of Africa. It is everything good Kenyans can think of. But what do we get from it? Year in, year out. Debts after debts, debts after debts, because it is not able to run its own affairs. We now need a law like this so that we can privatize it, and it continues to be the pride of Africa that it should be, and make Kenyans pride. I have gone through this act. It's a very important act in that it now sets into motion the way we are going to privatize the entities that are earmarked for privatization. We actually have an authority that is being formed, which is going to be the Privatization Authority of Kenya. Possibly we will add of Kenya, so that wherever we go, we know that what we are privatizing belongs to Kenya and it is being done by Kenyans. It's an authority that is supposed to spearhead privatization activities in the country. The way it has been formulated is from part 2 of the act. The cabinet secretary is given the powers to set up the authority, and once the authority comes in, it is supposed to be managed by a board of directors, which is chaired by a person appointed by the president, and the other members equally appointed. This is important because we also have technocrats in it, including principal secretaries for National Treasury, principal secretary responsible for matters relating to investments, and we have the Honorable Attorney General coming in, so that he does give advice and guidance when it comes to matters such as this. We know very well that there may be elements out there who are looking at privatization as a golden opportunity to take over through whatever mode of taking over, whether capture, whether stealing, whether which, so that they are able to enrich themselves. With such a law, these need to be forewarned that there will be no room for trying to take away Kenyans' properties which are supposed to be privatized. We have also banks which still are in the hands of the government, which banks, again, we need to relocate to see whether it's the high time that they are 100% privatized and the government opts out. I did talk about parastatals, including a company, a private limited liability company like the Kenya Power, which again Kenyans are complaining about because it is not rendering the services for which it is actually formed to render, in that I think the government still controls a large share of this particular company, and we should be moving away from this, such that we have Kenya Power fully privatized. We have then competitors coming in to compete with it to provide energy in the country, such a way that we Kenyans are able to enjoy energy services at affordable costs, because Kenya Power is going wayward. It is actually giving us bills which we are complaining about every time, and some of it, I'm convinced beyond doubt, have nothing to do with the high cost of petrol and petroleum products. I'm also convinced beyond doubt that it has nothing to do with levies imposed by the government. Possibly, it is a way of bridging up debts which it has incurred through levies which many Kenyans do not understand. We have a program in part 3 on how privatization is going to be done. This is very important because once the process kicks off, it must be controlled by a law on what is going to happen step after step until the targeted entities are actually fully privatized. Then we have an implementation program in part 4. This is again important because Kenyans need to know after privatization is started, it is actualized, for how long this is going to take place and how are we going to benefit from all this, including the privatization agreements that will have to be entered into from time to time. At the end of it all, any party that is aggrieved will have to go to the review. We are calling it the Privatization Review Board. This is a board that is going to perform quasi-judicial functions, such that if a party is not happy, a party is dissatisfied with any decision, then you have an appeal mechanism in place, which mechanism is supposed to serve justice to all those parties that go to it. This is a very important bill, and I do support that we actually pass it so that we can move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, allow me to recognize guests in the public gallery. We have Olelusie Primary School, Narok North Constituency, Narok County. We have Sekenani Primary School, Narok West Constituency, Narok County. And we have sugar farmers from Tinderet Constituency, Nandi County. On my own behalf and of the House, I welcome you to observe the proceedings of the House, and I'll give the member for Nandi County to welcome them and make your remarks for this bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. First, to welcome and appreciate the Nandi County sugar farmers who are in this House today to observe the proceedings. And Honorable Speaker, I want to say that what a beautiful coincidence when the farmers are here, because Honorable Speaker, if I go to speak to the issue of the bill that we have on the floor of the House today, Honorable Speaker, I have a personal interest in the privatization bill because of the farmers, the sugar farmers, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, every time the privatization bill is spoken about and issues privatization come up, I think about the sugar farmers, Honorable Speaker, who are actually people who take their produce to Chemelil Sugar and many other sugar companies, Honorable Speaker, in this country. Honorable Speaker, this bill is a timely bill, and it should have been done before, Honorable Speaker. It has now given us an opportunity to give privatization a legal footing so that we can be able to explore the privatization so that we have efficiency in service delivery to several factions and departments in this country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when we speak about privatization, we are not only speaking about the sugar companies, we are speaking about the sunset hotels of this country, Honorable Speaker. If you have noted, Honorable Speaker, this is one bill that has no factions because the whole of this country, Honorable Speaker, has government entities that are no longer giving profit and they're actually not able to run themselves, Honorable Speaker. So this is one bill that is actually cutting across in terms of ensuring that we have better run government entities so that we have income from the same, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I remember at times when you would go to Sunset Hotel, Honorable Speaker, there would be very nice fish there. And the next month you go there, Honorable Speaker, it is closed down because there is nothing that is able to run the facility, Honorable Speaker. And I think this is timely, Honorable Speaker. I want to speak, Honorable Speaker, to the bill. The bill, Honorable Speaker, if you have looked at it, it gives the Parliament, the parliamentarians an opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to be able to ratify it, Honorable Speaker. After the approvals have been done or the recommendations have been done, Honorable Speaker, they must and should come to this House, Honorable Speaker, as put out in the bill for ratification, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this gives an opportunity the representatives of the counties, the representatives of the constituencies, the representatives of the people, Honorable Speaker, to add their voice, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to speak passionately to Chemelil Sugar as an example of those entities that should be privatized immediately, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when I was growing up in the hills of Nandi, Honorable Speaker, Chemelil Sugar was a lion then. It was an entity that used to sponsor serious talent games, Honorable Speaker, football and volleyball and whatnot, and they used to fund them, Honorable Speaker. There was a school called Chemelil Academy, Honorable Speaker. It was an icon that was spoken about by each and everyone in this country, Honorable Speaker. But as we speak, Honorable Speaker, even the CSR that we used to get from Chemelil Sugar, the health facilities that they used to build, the roads that they used to repair, employment opportunities, Honorable Speaker, issues to do with the businesses, the sugar farmers, Honorable Speaker, that used to deliver their cane to that place, Honorable Speaker. It reached to a point, Honorable Speaker, in 2016, where a farmer cried and said, I actually delivered my cane in 2014 to Chemelil Sugar, and to 2016, I have not been paid, and my children are at home, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, these are part and some of the entities that we must ensure that they are privatized, Honorable Speaker, and we thank the drafters of this bill, Honorable Speaker, for giving this country an opportunity to be able to put these entities into private hands so that we have efficiency. We stop them, Honorable Speaker, from demanding too much from exchequer releases, and we actually have profits, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, every other thing that happens does not go without negative impacts, Honorable Speaker. And if you have gone through the bill, Honorable Speaker, you see that this particular bill is elaborate. It actually gives us the opportunity, or it provides expressly in the bill, Honorable Speaker, how to be able to handle those negative impacts, Honorable Speaker, which include and is not limited to monopoly and high prices, Honorable Speaker, that can at times come from privatizing most of these entities. Honorable Speaker, like an honorable member said earlier, he said that government is a very bad business entity, and they normally say everything that someone touches turns gold. But Honorable Speaker, it's not the same for government. Everything that the government touches in terms of business actually becomes something else. It's not gold, Honorable Speaker. It becomes disastrous, and it actually gives losses to this country. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that I support this particular bill, and I appreciate the committee, and I appreciate this thoughtful government, Honorable Speaker, that has gone all the way to ensure that we have a legal framework so that as we do the privatization, Honorable Speaker, we are respecting the laws of this country and the Constitution of Kenya, Honorable Speaker. So I support this bill in entirety, and I hope that we are going to have its implementation quite fast so that we bring back this country to its economic footing. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.